baie welkom by Melk in jou teetyd en dit is 'n voorreg om weer saam met julle te kan kuier. Die jaar het met 'n spoed begin en ons is baie opgewonde oor wat die jaar gaan bied. En ek moet vir julle sê, ek weet nie regtig wat die dag van môre inhou nie en ek wil nie te veel te ver vooruit beplan nie. En dis is ek wil vir julle vra bid vir asseblief vir ons dat ons goeie programme maak, dat ons programme maak wat werklik die Here se woord, se boodskap uitdra, die boodskap van nuwe lewe, die boodskap van die ewige lewe. Maar ja, help vir ons, bid vir ons, dra ons asseblief in julle gebede. Ek dink die tye is taai en ek dink ons gaan moet fokus op dit wat belangrik is. En ons wil dankie sê dit vir julle wat julle vir ons doen. Maar op daardie noot, vandag se gas is 'n baie spesiale persoon, na aan my, ek het hom so half op 'n whimsical leer ken daar by ons kerk, en ek dink julle sal hom baie geniet vandag, en sy naam is Bukani Zondi, en welcome Bukani.
Thank you.
Let me say it in Afrikaans, baie welkom Bukani.
Dankie.
So we're going to do the interview mostly in English, but I'm going to try to put some Afrikaans in. We will see what we can do. But I smiled when you said, let me just give background story. He's in our church, in our campus, if that's the right word to
Yes.
use. And we've got different campuses in Pretoria. But he's now leaving us, unfortunately, but going to another campus, and it was like a goodbye. We just like a send off, but you said when you said, you couldn't understand why this white guy, who everybody was staring at, I will tell you now who the guy is, and you'll get the joke, was so interested in you. And then what I realized is, but that is what evangelism is. Because he actually just went to you and just made it an important thing for his life to connect with you and to make sure you come to God, you come to Jesus. And that was so special for me. And then I realized I have to get you here and we have to talk about this.
Cool.
So that's why you're here.
Thank you. No, I'll tell you all about it.
Okay, cool. But first of all, where did Bukani grow up?
So I grew up in KZN. I don't know how well you know KZN.
I love KZN, yeah.
I grew up around Pinetown. There's a township around Pinetown called Discerning. It's actually an Afrikaans name. But I grew up there for most of my life. And then I visited my dad's side for my holidays. So I have a very interesting family dynamic. I have 16 siblings, and
Wow.
my dad has a couple of houses. So I would always go to different houses and for different holidays. And then I think it was around grade 7, I moved from where I was staying all the way to Potchefstroom, and then I came back again. But for most of my life, I grew up in KZN Dassenhoek. And then 2021, I moved up to Pretoria, and now we're here.
2021.
2021, yeah. It was COVID time.
But why? Because Groen is die land van Natal. Have you ever heard that song?
No.
I have to teach you that song.
Yeah.
But that's the most beautiful place in some of the places in our country is Natal. So why did you leave the sea for coming here?
To be honest, I left the beautiful grass and the sea. I left it because of a job. I didn't have a job that side. So COVID came. When COVID came, I was working for an organization called True Life. And we would go to schools and we would just address everyday life topics with the kids, whether it be bullying, whether it be GBV, at the schools. And so obviously when COVID came, all the schools were shut down, and there was no more business really. And so then I worked for a coffee shop. My brother worked for this coffee shop called Coffee Minister in KZN, it's in Kloof. And so then I worked for a coffee shop. He taught me coffee through the coffee shop for a little while, and then when he finished, I then obviously had to look for my own job. And at that time, my girlfriend, Emma, moved up to Pretoria to study.
Okay.
And so she was like, hey, I have this very bizarre idea. How about you come to Pretoria? I'm like, I don't know how that would work. I don't think it would work, but I also think you've lost your mind.
Yeah.
So then that's where it all started. And then I think fast forward down the line, sent my CV. I came here for a visit. Actually, it was interesting. I came here for a visit, and then through that visit, I had a couple of interviews set because obviously I was still young and I had never been in an interview before. And so I was like, let me go do the interviews for fun. And experience. And so then I did that. And then I actually did one interview with the Pallet Farm stall. Some of you may know it. It's in Pretoria, Lardus Park. And it was insane. So I had the interview with no intentions of coming back because obviously I knew I had to go back to KZN. Not only that, rent is expensive. Moving up all the way from KZN is no joke. And I was 19 at the time. I was turning 19 at the time. So it was all impossible. And then I went back. As I went back, the day I went back, I missed my flight. Which now I understand why it was God orchestrated. So I missed my flight. I went back, so I had to stay a couple more days because I couldn't afford to pay for a flight right there and then. And so then I contacted the place. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm here for a couple of days. Wow. Can I come and we see whether you really like me or I really like the setup as well? And so then I went and I worked for 3 days, and I really enjoyed the place, but there was still no way for me to make it. So then I went back home. Fast forward, it's a very long story short. We tried looking for a place, couldn't find a place, and then the one day the owner of the shop called me. He's like, listen, we put up a poster at the shop for you, which is interesting because that's how I got introduced to Retief. Now I've broken...
No, that's fine. That's fine.
So that's how I got introduced to Retief. It's very interesting. So what happened was they put up a poster for me at the shop. Listen, hey, this guy's looking for a place to stay. He's in KZN. He's willing to move up here. And then Retief saw the poster. He took a photo right there and then, which I didn't know at the time. He took a photo. He put it on the staff group. He's like, listen, guys, pray for this guy. If you know somebody who has a place, let me know. But there's something on this guy's life, and
he just knew.
He just knew, and I don't know how. It's still, it's still very, it's still very weird. And then, long story short, I moved up to Pretoria. He called me, the owner of the coffee shop, which is Peter. He called me. He's like, listen, I think I found you a place. When can you move? I'm like, I don't have the money to move, but give me 2 days. And then there was no hope, because I knew like it's a lot of money and I don't have it. And then he calls me the next day and he's like, listen, I will pay your first rent, so you can come here. So it was really, really a miracle that I ended up here, and then I moved up here. I was living 500 meters away from the shop, so everything was easy. It was really
God ordained.
It was really was. It really was.
Okay, but were you a Christian by that time, or did your parents, were they Christians? How did you come to know the Lord? How was your childhood?
Yeah. So like I said, I grew up in a very interesting family, dynamic.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a very ancestral background, very deep ancestral worship and slaughtering and offerings year by year. So no, I didn't know the Lord, but I was a dancer, right? So as a kid I was a dancer.
Let me just make sure, were you a dancer or were you like a dancer, like a Zulu dancer?
No, I was a not a Zulu dancer. I could do Zulu dancing though. Okay. But no, I did hip hop dancing.
Wow.
Ethnic dancing, and then a little bit of contemporary and other stuff. And I actually won South African championships with that.
Wow.
I danced with a crew.
Sorry, yeah.
I had a crew that I was dancing with called Masterpiece. Anyways.
Wow.
So
like.
in our community, there still is a church that played a very, very big role in my life. So they would invite us, or they would let us come in to perform, and so that's why I went to church. And so I went to church just to perform, dance, leave, and hopefully speak to a couple of girls. That was my intentions.
Okay.
Those are my intentions.
At least you're honest.
Yeah, and that's where I met the Lord. And so I was going for a year and 2 years maybe, but I was very education driven because I knew I had to do something to leave the environment that I was in. A better life for my mom, a better life for my family meant that I needed to study very hard. And so when I was doing my matric, I wasn't a believer yet. I knew the truth, but I wasn't a believer, and I would go to church for many other reasons. And so what happened was I got very, very sick in my matric year, which now you have this year that you've planned basically most of your life for so that it can set you up for the future. And now you can't really fully engage with everything that's coming your way. And so what would happen is I would go to class and I would just be sick. Things were happening to me. I got hit by a car. It was just weird. Sure. And then I overheard, first of all, we went to a Sangoma who then told my parents, listen, there's some ancestral things that need to happen. There's some sacrifices that need to happen. So-and-so is not happy with whatever.
Sure.
And so now I am at home. I am basically watching my life drift away because that's what I based my whole identity on, was my education. I'm watching my life disappear in front of my eyes, and the only connection I can make is these things that my parents believe in and that I believe in are the reason why I can't make it in life. And so that's where it all started. And then it kind of carried on from there. And then I overheard my mom and my dad also speaking just on why certain things are happening. And it was really, most of it was really ancestral based, which really aggravated me, and it really made me mad and upset, because I'm really like, this is the year and this is the moment where I can really build my life and my sister and my sister's life, my family's life, basically all of it. And so then I was like, okay, I know enough to know that if I go and ask for prayer, I'll be fine.
Wow.
Right? And so that's where it all started. And so then at the time, my senior leader, who's Begi Masigane, who also had a massive role in my life, I went, I don't even know if you remember this, I went and asked for prayer. We had this thing called Fuse Group, which is basically a cell group. And I went and asked for prayer, and I was kind of sugarcoating it. And then they prayed for me, just broke some ties, soul ties, a lot of things. But it was obviously, the year had progressed to a very, very later stage. And so I gave my life to Jesus throughout those prayer sessions and fuse groups. I can't really put a moment and put a date on it and say that's the date that I gave my life to Jesus, but things started making sense. The truth started coming alive, if I can call it that. And I gave my life to Jesus then, and then I decided that year that no, actually, if this is what I believe and this is real, like, I need to know more about it. And so after that year, which was 2019, I then did a gap year with Open Skies Church, which was the main campus of the smaller campus that was in our community. So then I did a gap year in Bible college there, and so that's when everything kind of foundations were laid. I understood what was happening, and I understood the sacrifice that Jesus made for my life, and
that was the ultimate sacrifice. But wasn't it for you, like, or for your parents, listen, you don't want to do the traditional thing, the ancestral thing now anymore. You do not want to do those sacrifices, because I believe then you got saved and you got healed. How was it for them? Did they accept it?
So It's an interesting one. I thought I was going to have really, really big repercussions from my family, because obviously I started going, listen, I can't attend whatever we're doing and stuff like that. Sure. And so my brother was saved. I think my brother and I got saved pretty much along the same year, time, the same time. He was older than me, and so we would literally plan our escapes. So we would plan our escapes. So if something was happening, we would stay at work a little bit later and arrive home when everything is kind of dialed down.
Wow.
And I remember, because I thought it was going to be really hard on me, because I was still very much dependent on my parents, financially, food, living, and so and when you accept the Lord, there are a lot of relationships that get damaged. There are a lot of relationships, because that's just who He is. His truth is so contrast to who we are as people that it often offends people and will cause a rub on relationships. Anyways, so then I remember once, my brother and I were escaping. I remember once I committed to, we were fasting at church, and then I fasted. Sure. It was a 3-day fast, and 2 days in, I'm like, yeah, see, this is bad, and I can't do this. And I went, and I was like, okay, it was dinner. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have dinner, right? And then my dad said, which my dad doesn't use words, he doesn't talk. He says, listen, like, if this church thing is real, you must take it serious. If you're fasting, you're fasting, right? And I'm like, yes, Lord, this is awesome. And so that year, he had a lot of grace with him. He had a lot of, and I think it was really good for me to really have those foundations laid without any conflict but it's still a journey. It's still a journey for them. It's still a journey for, I think, for everyone in the family. I mean, like I said, I have 16 siblings, and only 2 of us were saved. It's
tough.
It is. It still is. It's still I would receive a phone call that is confusing today. That my dad would be like, "Hey, listen, we're doing this and this and this. I obviously expect to see you at home." And I'm like, but he knows that and it's really tough to navigate, because it's not as simple as believe in the Lord. Right, this is how he's been raised for 60 years of his life, and it's really a stronghold. It's not just what he believes, and I think that's what
it makes it so difficult.
Yeah, it makes it so difficult. But I also think it's what we need to understand as the Christian community, who is evangelizing people who have who have those experiences. That it's not just a thing that people believe. It's so tricky, because the enemy actually provides, right? And so he
makes it stronger in the spirit, yeah.
And so you will make your sacrifice, and it will feel like things are going right, but that's the price you pay, right? You will do something, he will provide, get you hooked, but there's a price that you pay later. Yeah. And I think that's the...
But you know what, Bukani, I don't just think it's just in a traditional African culture. I think it's very much more so, and we have to understand that as Christian people. But it's happening in Christian people's lives as well, who also still have strongholds. And I know people say, but you can't have the Holy Spirit and still have strongholds. You can, because unfortunately you still sin. You still open yourself to the devil, and then he has a legal right to come in and do and destroy. And you sometimes give him that legal right. And I don't think we do understand how strong the work of Satan is, not just in African culture, but in any spiritual realm. And if we can realize that, because it's so frustrating for me, and I will sometimes say to my husband, listen, I'm trying to speak to these people or this person, but I can see I can see this is not working.
Yeah.
They just doesn't get it. They don't do it. They just, and then then I get to myself, but this is a spiritual attack.
Yeah.
You have to work in the spirit, not in the flesh, and trying to explain and explain and explain. And so I think, and it must be so difficult for you as this is your friends and your family, the people that's the closest to you. But now you are fortunately at Every Nation, and you now have the opportunity to take the young adults at Willows and do stuff there and everything. When did you know there was a calling on your life?
So I met Retief through the coffee shop.
I just want to say he's a coffee connoisseur, coffee snob.
I love coffee.
Don't give him the coffee, nee? Don't give him.
Anyways, so I met Retief then at the coffee shop. It was mostly on Mondays. It was mostly. Anyways, it was during the week, and so he then goes, "Listen, I would love for you to join my Connect group," and I'm like, "Okay." And at the time, because I had come from a church background and a Christian organization-based background, and now I was working on a Sunday, and so I couldn't really go to church. I was really hungry for community, and I was really hungry for, and so it was easy. I was like, yes, let's do it. Monday, I'm there. And then we started, and I expected it to be really like any Christian program that you go to and all of that. And I think throughout that, it really, like when you don't go to church, and I think people don't realize how important community is. When you don't go to church, basic foundations start to just fizzle. And they start to just disappear. And that's because there's no community keeping you to them, but also just reminding you that there's a bigger purpose, right? And so, met Retief, we started Connect Group, and just something started growing again in my life, and my heart for Jesus. Not that I'd lost Jesus, but it was just, there was just no community and all of that. And so there was 3 of us in the Connect Group. Anyways, I think 4 months into the Connect Group, Retief goes, "Listen, I think there's a call in your life," which I knew. I knew right there and then that it was, how my life happened. I finished my matric. From my matric, I went into a gap year. From my gap year, worked with the youth at church and everything. And so I knew that when that was stripped away from me because of COVID, I knew it wasn't finished. Anyways, but it was very difficult to accept at the time. And so Retief goes, "Listen, I think there is a call in your life." I'm like, "I think you are very wrong." Because at the time, this was my first proper salary, right? The first time I could ever afford to pay medicine for my mom, to get my mom something, to get me something. And so now this man telling me that I have a call in my life is a code for, "Listen, you might have to trust for provision in some months." And I'm like, "No, I like my hours. I like to know that I've worked X amount of hours and I'm getting X amount of money." And so I kind of just, I was like, "No, I'm not interested. It's just not." He's like, "Listen, go pray about it. Think about it. I'm not going to push. I'm not going to force you." And then I started praying, but not really at the time as well, because I'm like, not only is the owner of the coffee shop brought me from KZN and provided for me so much, he's also just taken the role of being a father to me. Like this Afrikaans man he's amazing, but also he's not just my boss. He's now really taken the role of a father. I can speak to him any day. I can go to him any day. I can walk into his house any day. It's not a boss-employee relationship. It's a father-son relationship, which was also a very big cry in my life. And so this man has now provided for me so much for me to go to him and go 8 months later, "Listen, I've loved Pretoria, but I think I should move on to my next." And so there was a lot of factors to it. So I said no. And then I went home, didn't really pay attention to it at all. And I remember once, because it obviously, I was a believer enough to know that if something like that is said, you should take it really serious. And so I went once on a walk and I just started crying out to the Lord, and I'm like, Lord, I can't do this, and I can't. I need to be here. First of all, I need the money and I need provision, but not just that, like, you are going to have to speak very loudly. And then I went home and then I laid on my bed and I fell asleep. That was a Sunday now. And I had a dream. About our Connect group, Retief and I having a Connect group, and him giving me a letter and saying, listen, this is an internship, go sign up for it. And then I walked away from that. This was still a dream, and I had this thing in my hands, and I was speaking to somebody else, and they gave me the same thing, right? And so now I have these 2 pages that look exactly the same. It's about an internship program. Anyways, woke up the Monday, went to Connect Group, didn't share this because why would you want to share it?
Yeah.
And so then I went to Connect. Had Connect, it was fine. No conversation was brought up about my calling, which was awesome. And then I went home. And as I got home, Retief sends me a message. He's like, hey, listen, I forgot to send you this.
Okay.
It was the internship, Every Nation internship.
Yeah.
And so right then I knew, I'm like, Lord, this is amazing that you're speaking, but I really don't want you to be speaking right now. And so anyways, then I started taking it serious, and then we started praying about it. And then obviously the final thing was to talk to my boss, who was now a bigger figure than just a boss. Anyways, and so I sat him down. I'm like, listen, I feel there's a call in my life. And then I was still open to him saying, listen, can you stay for another year? Because this man has done so much for me. I can't just leave, and I don't want to burn that bridge. And then he goes, listen, I know. And he goes, it never made sense to me. And then he started crying, and then I was crying, and then it was a whole thing. And then he goes, there is no way, and it never made sense to me why I would phone somebody from KZN for a job that anyone could have done. And he said, from the moment I read your CV, I knew that there was a call in your life. I just never knew that it would be this soon. And so that was final confirmation for me. And so from then I knew, okay, this needs to happen, and it has to happen. And if the Lord has used Uncle Peter for this moment, then that's just what needs to happen. So yeah, wow. That's a very long story short.
Thank you for Bukani for that. And I have to say goodbye now because we're out of time. So time just flies. But thank you, and I know that God is going to use you still immensely. And I pray this for you, for your ministry, that it will go from strength to strength. And like you said, but stick to the basics. Stick to the basics and be blessed, brother. And I'm so happy I know this guy.
Thank you.
Maar tot de volgende keer. Tot ziens.